Quiet on set. Speed. And action.
I know it was you, Fredo. You broke my heart.
You know how to whistle, don't you? You just put your lips together and blow.
Welcome to the Foot and Friends on Film podcast, discussing everything about cinema. Now here's your host, Nick Baylor.
What's in the bar?
Houston, we have a problem.
You can't handle the truth.
I'm not what you think. You're crazy.
Welcome to the official podcast of Foot and Friends on Film.com, where we discuss everything about cinema. I'm your host, Nick Mailer. On today's episode, we got a special guest. This is a lifelong friend of mine who is a mixed martial arts fighter, the number one bantamweight in Canada. He's also a film buff, and he decided to come on the show and talk to us about his 25 favorite sports movies. Get your seats and grab your popcorn. It's your feature presentation. As mentioned, we are the official podcast of Foot and Friends on Film.com, where our motto is any film you haven't seen is a new experience. Normally on these shows, John H. Foot takes us to film school, but today we're talking to my buddy, gentleman Josh Hill. So please welcome our guest. Very special episode for you today. The podcasts have been predominantly just myself and John, and our staff writer, Alan, has chimed in on a couple of the episodes, but we have our first official guest speaker tonight on a podcast. It is gentleman Josh Hill, a mixed martial arts fighter with a pro record of 19 wins and 3 losses. He is ranked the number one bantamweight in Canada, currently fighting under Bellator. He was an alumnus of the UFC's Ultimate Fighter Season 18, X2 WSOF title challenger, an aggression MMA champion, a Naga champion. He's the owner, coach of Vision Quest MMA and Fitness. And more importantly than that, a dear old friend of mine. Please welcome gentleman Josh Hill. How's it going, buddy?
Hey, brother. How's it going?
Good. So we're having you on the show because you're a bit of a film buff. You've also got a little bit of acting experience. You got a very successful fighting career. You got abs like a friggin' like a cheese grinder. And I've always said of my buddy here, Josh, that future as a pro wrestler or the next Jason Statham is not beyond his grasp. I want to talk about pro wrestling. You got your ring name, Gentleman Josh Hill, from your great uncle John Hill, who was part of the WWE, then WWF Tag Team Champions, the Valiant Brothers. And he went under the ring name Jerry Valiant.
Yeah. So I got some pro wrestling, lineage in my blood. And I just, I think it was my dad or my uncle when I started my fight career. They was joking around about you should go as, Gentleman Josh Hill because of my grandpa's brother. Because that was his most famous role as a wrestler. He had a whole bunch of different names, but that was
those guys do,
yeah. But we just kind of took that, and pro wrestling. I've always been a huge fan of pro wrestling as well. Not so much nowadays. Back in the late '80s, early '90s, even the 2000s, it was all right. But it's something that I always liked, and I actually got to do one pro wrestling match, which is pretty cool. So I checked that off the bucket list.
Well, it's a mix between what you do and what I do. It's theater meets fighting, kind of, right?
Yeah. That's, man. A lot of people kind of shit on wrestling a bit, and I have so much respect for those guys, like the athleticism, the toughness on their bodies, but also being able to entertain people and carry storylines and stuff is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I used to be obsessed with the WWE. Yeah, I used to have all you guys over for the pay-per-views and stuff. I was all about it. And then
remember you were stone cold for Halloween once, remember?
I totally shaved my head and everything. Yeah, I used to go to the shows, and I'm not as into it as I used to be, but I still have a tremendous amount of respect for what it does, because again, it's a type of theater, and the fact is that those guys are working just so damn hard all the time, year round. Even when you don't see them on TV, they're doing house shows. And you're right, it takes a lot to do the physical aspect of it, but then also the entertainment aspect of it. is pretty impressive. And of course, being into films and being a film critic, you can't help but notice some guys who've successfully transitioned over. I mean, obviously the biggest is Dwayne Johnson, The
Yeah.
Rock. He's one of the biggest movie stars in the world right now. Dave Bautista gave
Yep.
some brilliant performances in the Guardians of the Galaxy films, and he's got an expanding film career. Guys like John Cena and even, Kevin
Even
Nash and Goldberg and Steve Austin, these guys show up in movies like The Longest Yard.
yeah.
Yeah. So I guess you'd be a cruiserweight if you were.
Oh yeah, man. I'm like the Rey Mysterio category.
No,
man.
yeah, but those guys are often the most entertaining. I just want to state for our listeners that even though this guy I'm talking to right now could kick your ass, probably anyone who's listening, the name Gentleman is very suiting for him. He's a total stand-up guy. We've known each other since kindergarten.
Yep, kindergarten.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and I also have to give a tip of the hat to my buddy Josh, because you were really integral in getting me interested in cinema in a big bad way. I remember I sort of cut my teeth on the Disney Renaissance back in the early 1990s, Aladdin and The Little Mermaid and The Lion King and all that stuff. And coming over and seeing your VHS collection in your basement, you got me into more adult fanfare. You showed me Halloween and you showed me Scarface, and I was like, wow, there's a whole other world out there that I hadn't really known about. So
Yeah, man.
yeah.
I remember that. I remember, you coming over and we're just, I'm like, you gotta watch this, and you just kind of, I could see you get hooked on it,
Yeah, we actually we went and saw the latest Halloween movie back in 2018, and I know we're gonna try and meet up for the sequel, Halloween Kills. I know you're a big horror fan.
Huge, yeah. I love horror, man. If I probably had to pick one genre that would be my favorite, it would probably be horror. I don't know why, but I just always loved it since I was probably 5 years old. I watched Nightmare on Elm Street, and that was it.
Yeah, totally. And maybe we'll get you back on the show and we'll do a countdown of horror films. But because you are an athlete and you're involved in that world, I wanted some insight on sports movies from you.
Yeah.
And it's funny you asked, does that include fighting movies? And I was like, of course. This is, this is
Well, I don't
what
know
you do.
if you wanted, team sport movies or what. Yeah, I figured it's that much.
I mean, I'm not a big fan of pugilism. I think it's funny when I'm watching one of your fights, I get really, really into it. But I don't really watch it other than that. And I don't think you could show me a boxing match that I would find entertaining, but man, when they do movies about it, sometimes I really, really dig it and really get into it. One that I saw, I couldn't believe how much I liked was Creed. And
yeah. Yep.
I wasn't the biggest Rocky fan. I mean, I totally have a lot of respect for Sylvester Stallone and what he did with that franchise, but Creed was something that I think sounded so stupid on paper and then just ended up working so well. It's like the whole idea of Creed, it's like, oh my God, really? This is just a cash grab. But then they got this young filmmaker, Ryan Coogler, to do it. And then there's the great boxing scenes and the scene where Stallone says, I want you to go knock that son of a bitch down. Say it. I'm going to knock that son of a bitch down. It's like, I know you are, because you're a Creed, and I love you, kid. And I'm crying. And
yeah.
Even John Foote, we both agree that Stallone should have taken home the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor that year for his work in Creed. I mean, it went to Mark Rylance for Bridge of Spies, which was great, Steven Spielberg movie, but what Stallone did was just unreal. And, putting characters in situations where they're fighting and battling, it often leads to very, very compelling stuff. Now, we got a list of your top 25 favorite sports movies, but I think we each have a couple honorable mentions. Do you want to start off there, and then I'll chime in?
Sure. Do you want me to just list? I just wrote 5 honorable mentions down. You want me to just
Yeah, just go for it. Talk a little bit about them.
Sure. One of them was Ali with Will Smith. Good movie. I thought Will did an excellent job, portraying Ali, and he even got in the same physical shape as Ali. Ali wasn't a huge jacked, ripped guy. He just he was in good shape, obviously, but I think they nailed the build perfectly there.
I think it's sort of a better performance than it is a movie, but
Yeah, I agree with that totally.
yeah.
Another one, actually, I just was watching The Last Dance the other day on Netflix, and this one kind of came to my mind, and it's Space Jam, man, with Michael Jordan.
Yeah, yeah, I can't help but love that movie.
It's like one of those, it's kind of a
It's
silly movie,
funny.
but
Bill
but it's good.
Murray, there's a sequel coming out with
Yep.
LeBron James.
We'll see. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but I'm hoping that they
Here's
can,
the thing, though. I happen to know for a fact that LeBron James has way more natural comedic acting talent than Michael Jordan did. So it could be good. It could be good. We'll see.
hoping for the best.
All right.
Uh, Another one was White Man Can't Jump, Woody Harrelson, Wesley Snipes, classic 90s flick.
Love Woody.
Love Woody. Anything Woody does, I love it. Another one that was kind of a surprise that I started watching out of nowhere. I think I was actually on a plane and I watched it and I was just like, "Oh, this is an awesome movie." Is Draft Day with Costner.
Kevin Costner, yeah.
Yeah, have you seen that?
I have not.
No,
Is this
it's a
what? Sorry,
good
explain a
movie,
little
man.
bit of it to me.
So he's the general manager of a football team, and it just kind of goes through this whole day of the draft day and all the pressures on him and whatnot, and dealing with all the coaches and the players, and he makes these crazy moves, and it's very, very, very good, and of course it's Costner, so it's awesome.
Yeah, isn't it amazing how Costner has done some brilliant work this late in his career? Like he sort of had a resurgence where, I mean, to me, I'm a big geek. Like when he played Jonathan Kent in Man of Steel, he was just
Yeah,
absolutely perfect. I got
awesome.
choked up in the trailer, man. When the kid's like, "Can I just keep pretending I'm your son?" He's like, "You are my son." It was like, yeah, fucking right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
Costner's the man.
And one more that I put on there, it's a kind of a cheesy 80s martial arts movie, but awesome every time I watch it and entertaining, is a movie called Best of the Best with Eric Roberts.
Good old Eric Roberts.
Yeah. And James Earl Jones actually is in it too. He's the coach.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Couple of movies that come to mind for me. We're going to talk about because they're on your list. A boxing movie that I really love and I maintain is Russell Crowe's finest performance is Cinderella Man, where he plays James J. Braddock. Sort of a movie that got released early on in the year, and except for Paul Giamatti, was basically ignored come Oscar season. I find for a sport like boxing that I'm not at all interested in, they can make such great movies at it. Another one comes to mind. John and I recently just did a podcast on Christian Bale and on supporting actors, and that's The Fighter.
Yeah.
Great work from Mark Wahlberg, who I'm not the hugest fan of, but an exceptional performance by Christian Bale. And again, just boxing movies get to me, man. I don't really know why, but there's always a good story there.
Yeah, it's just, I think the way that you can film any type of like fight movie, they can make it so much, they usually make it so much more dramatic than it really is in real life, but it captures the audience, you know?
You know what movie is to me a lot like a fighting movie, although it's not, but it comes off that way, is 8 Mile.
Yeah, yeah. It's, you know what, it's pretty much the same type of storyline. It's a guy that is kind of, long shot underdog, and you'd see him, training, and with his training, it's, writing rhymes and stuff like that and grinding it out. And
They
then
do
this,
battle. They are like
yeah,
fight.
exactly.
It
Yeah,
has the same sort of rhythms and shit.
he finally gets his chance to kind of show himself, and he chokes actually first, remember, early in the movie, and then he comes back at the end, and
Yes, and that movie won Eminem an Oscar. So
yeah,
people forget he was the first artist to win the Academy Award for Best Original Song for a rap song, and he wasn't there to accept. But this past Oscar ceremony, he came back and performed it, and he blew the house down.
yeah. Eminem's the best.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I got into rap music big time in my early teens, he was a huge influence on me. We're going to start off on your list. I asked you for 20, you gave 25, which is more. More is always better. A 1993 drama film called The Program, starring James Caan, Halle Berry, Omar Epps, Craig Sheffer, and Christy Swanson, and Joey Lauren Adams. Let's talk about that a bit.
Yeah, it's a movie that I watched years ago, probably in my late teens when I first seen it. Really, really good football movie. Kind of showed the ins of the college football program. Showed the star quarterback and all the pressures that he has to go through and the way he deals with it. James Caan plays a great head coach, dealing with all the things that go along with coaching a college football team and yeah, it just is a good portrayal of kind of the ins and outs of that college football life.
And you are, I mean, aside from just fighting, you've always been playing sports, right? I know you played hockey. You've always been really, basically not like me, very athletic.
Yeah, hockey, baseball, football, rugby,
Right
you
on.
name it. Yep.
Cool. Coming in, number 24 is For the Love of the Game.
Yes. Your boy Costner again.
Yep.
So this is one that actually I just watched it about 2 weeks ago. I just I don't know, I seen it come on one day and I'm just like, oh yeah, I want to sit down and watch that again. And it's something about baseball movies that they're so like relaxing. I don't know, for me, it just
Maybe because the
might be
sport
different.
is so boring.
Just the way that's you know what, you might be right. I either
I
you
like
or
baseball.
hate it, I think.
But I am reminded of a Simpsons episode when Homer quits drinking for a month and he's at a baseball game and he's just like, man, without alcohol, I forgot how boring this game is.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. It can be boring for sure. But they make this movie, even though this movie is kind of like a slower movie, they still make it like grasping, and it kind of shows Contrary at the end of his career, and he's kind of given like an ultimatum what he wants to do, and he ends up pitching a perfect game for his his last game ever, and kind of it shows him current day and going back and showing how he got to where he was, and it's pretty cool.
Story of redemption, and again has that underdog element.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right on. Coming in at number 23, we have Rookie of the Year.
Rookie of the Year, buddy. This one's I remember watching this countless times when I was just a kid. It's about a young kid, kind of a dorky kid. He loves baseball, but he's not really very good at it. It's the lead is played by Thomas Ian Nicholas. He's in American Pie as Kevin, and he has an accident. And he runs and trips on a ball and breaks his arm, and gets put in a cast for a certain amount of time. And then when they take the cast off, his arm heals very oddly, and he ends up throwing 100-mile-an-hour fastballs. Yeah. So they ask him
when you break your arm,
That's what happens. Very, very realistic. But yeah, he ends up getting an offer to play for I forget what team is. It's the Cubs, Chicago Cubs. And there's an old pitcher there that is his hero, played by Gary Busey, and then the pitching coach is Daniel Stern. It's just one of those 90s heartwarming, funny comedies that's very entertaining.
Man, remember when Gary Busey wasn't crazy?
I love Busey, man. He's the best.
Yeah, funny guy.
Sure is.
Number 22, this is a film that got a lot of recognition at the Academy Awards, directed by Bennett Miller, story of the Oakland Athletics transformation due to Billy Beane being in charge of the team. That's, of course, Moneyball.
Yeah, and this one, if you look, we'll go through my list. Most of my picks are from the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, but this is one that was a little bit more current. And I just thought they did a fantastic job. This one kind of reminded me a lot like Draft Day. So if you like Moneyball, I guarantee you'll like Draft Day. Brad Pitt, he's my favorite actor of all time. So he does an amazing performance. And Jonah Hill was surprisingly, he's getting better and better every movie he did,
Yeah, remember 10 years ago, if someone would have said two-time Academy Award nominee Jonah Hill, you might have laughed. But yeah, he was great in this. He didn't have any of that manic, hilarious improv kind of thing going for him, but he has a great chemistry with Brad Pitt, who's phenomenal in this movie. And it It's based on a book written by the same guy who wrote The Big Short, which was later adapted by Adam McKay. And for a sports movie, it's less about what goes on Michael Lewis was the author's name. It's less about what goes on the field and more about what happens, behind the scenes. And it takes sort of a mathematical and procedural kind of storyline and really makes it energetic. And it's exceptionally directed by Bennett Miller. Philip Seymour Hoffman gives a great supporting performance in it. Chris Pratt shows up. Like, you just got a lot of actors sort of bringing their A game. And great movie. One of the best movies of that year.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, it's if you liked that, you'll probably like Draft Day. And also Moneyball is pretty cool because it's all based on,
Yeah,
true
I didn't
events.
know any of that story because I haven't followed baseball since
Since the 93 World Series.
since the 92-93 World Series. When I was a big fan. Yeah, Toronto gets a championship every 2 decades or something. So,
Yep.
yeah. Coming up next, we're going to talk about a film written, produced, and directed by Spike Lee and starring Denzel Washington, one of the best actors out there. He Got Game.
Yeah, game. This one is, like I said, one of those late 90s. You can 100% right away when you start watching it, it's Spike Lee. Just the movie. And what I liked about this movie is just they kind of mixed the family drama within the basketball, a star player coming up, and basically he's getting ready to pick where he wants to go to school. He's the hottest player in the country, and his dad has just been released out of prison for accidentally murdering his mom. And he's trying to persuade him to sign to a certain school, and then they'll relieve some of his sentence, which is kind of crazy. But it's Denzel, and he does obviously amazing performance like he always does.
Yeah. Another type of movie is something like Major League, which is number 20.
Major League. Now this is a classic. It's obviously a comedy. But again, I liked how they used the Cleveland Indians, a real baseball team. You got Tom Berenger and you got Charlie Sheen, as the Wild Thing, the pitcher, and it's just a fun, I think it's late 80s, comedy, and 89, yeah. I don't know anybody that doesn't like this movie.
It's fun, yeah. It's a farce. It's a screwball comedy, but I remember watching with my old man, and he laughed his ass off. He had an infectious laugh watching this movie. Sorry, I just have to do this now because we mentioned.
Yeah.
All right, folks. I got a bunch of guitars next to my next to my laptop here. So wow, thing. All right, coming in at number 19 is a movie.
This one you probably like this one, eh?
Yeah, of course. I mean, John and I have talked about this in a couple of different episodes. Talked about it in our Scorsese episode. Right now, we're recording our best of the 1980s, and it's Martin Scorsese's Raging Bull, where Robert De Niro plays Jake LaMotta, a boxer with a shit ton of personal demons. This movie moves like a train wreck. It's a hard watch. It's not something you really want to watch a lot of times over.
Mm-hmm.
But something that John said that I think was quite insightful is you see the opening credits and he's in the ring shadow boxing in slow motion. And that sort of tells you what the whole film is going to be. He's fighting against himself. And it's a phenomenal performance from Robert De Niro as Jake LaMotta. The real fighter, Jake LaMotta, was a consultant on the film. He said that De Niro was in good enough shape that he could have fought and, possibly won. He was that committed, which is so shocking when it's juxtaposed against how fat he got to play Jake LaMotta as an old man. You're someone who's no stranger to intense workouts here. I mean, how does De Niro look in the movie during his scenes in the ring?
Oh man, he looks good, and especially for that time too, like 1980.
Yeah.
I think nowadays, if you watch, like, if you look at, like you're talking about Creed, look at Michael B. Jordan now, how crazy, jacked he gets. But for that time too,
It wasn't such a
incredible shape.
thing.
Yeah, exactly.
If you look at Christopher Reeve as Superman, he was great, but like Henry Cavill as Superman had to do something crazy to get that jacked. I mean, look at what Daniel Craig goes through to play James Bond now. You think Sean Connery ever went through that shit?
How about Adam West as Batman?
Oh, Adam West will always be the one true Batman. Remember when he's on The Simpsons and they see him at the car show with, "Hey kids, Batman." That's not Batman. Of course I'm Batman. Ew, I didn't need molded rubber to improve my physique. Pure. No, I was so sad when he died, but he lived a full life. He was my first Batman. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
But very much still Batman. Sorry, where are we at? Raging Bull, right. So I know you love your crime and gangster movies too. You got to be a big Scorsese fan.
Oh yeah. I was doing like, during this whole pandemic, I've been doing like my top 10s.
Yeah.
And I've just been putting them out there all day. And actually, for one of my top 10s, I did Body Transformations, and I put De Niro. I forget what place I put him in, but he's definitely on the list for Body Transformations for the role. And also Scorsese, obviously, he's probably my all-time favorite director.
Yeah, he's the greatest. He's the greatest living director, and he just proved last year that even at his old age, I mean, for my money, The Irishman was the best film of 2009.
Yep.
John agrees. Just insane. It was great to see him work with Pacino too.
Yeah, finally, having all three of them together, and Pesci, it just
phenomenal in The Irishman. I mean, you're expecting him to play this character that we've seen before, like Tommy DeVito or Nicky Santoro. There's a little girl here told my friend to go fuck himself. Like all that. But in this, he doesn't lose his temper. He doesn't raise his voice. He's a soft-spoken. He's an elegant guy, but still equally as terrifying. I mean, John thinks Pesci should have won the Oscar that went to Brad Pitt. Neither of us were upset to see Brad Pitt win it. We both love Brad Pitt, and it was his time. But what I loved about this movie was seeing him work with Pacino, and the scene where Pacino just loses it on a bunch of employees. I honestly think he forgot his line in the scene, but I think Scorsese just said to him, "Al, you like to scream? I want you to scream like you've never screamed before."
Yeah.
"I'm going to prison. You fucking know that? I'm in a room full of fucking idiots." And he was just, his fucking fathers. He's like choking on his own words. It's just brilliant. We're going to talk about Pacino a little bit later on the list too. So look forward to that.
Oh yeah.
Number 18 is Remember the Titans.
Yeah, 2000. Again, we got our man Denzel in there. This movie, actually, a lot of people would probably say they would rank this much higher. I love it. But I just, it's one of those football movies that's kind of, the big theme of it was race, and it brought the two, finally having whites and blacks playing together on the same team. Yeah. That was like a huge thing back in the time it was set, and having Ryan Gosling's in it, and
Ethan
I can't remember now. Ethan Super. Yeah, I've seen him lately, actually.
I wanted to bring him up for that reason, because we're talking about body transformations. Like,
yeah,
I remember when he was in Mallrats, and in that, very, very big guy. And then saw him in The Wolf of Wall Street, and it was like, oh, he's sort of thin.
Lost some weight, yep.
Now he's like jacked.
Yeah, man. Crazy. Yeah, I would say he was probably like 400 pounds. I'm not even exaggerating.
Oh, I think you're right. I think he was definitely up there.
And yeah, looking at him now, it's like you wouldn't even recognize him.
Good for him, because we'd like to see him around for a while. He's a good actor. Mm-hmm. Remember seeing him in The Butterfly Effect when he plays the goth?
Yep. Even back, he was on Boy Meets World, I believe, too. Even way back when, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, he's been around for a while. No, he got some good range. I'd like to see more from him. Coming in at number 17, we have a great movie with one thing that kind of bugs me, which I'll mention after you talk about it. Miracle.
2004, starring Kurt Russell, about the real life miracle that happened when the U.S. beat the Soviets back in 19. I can't remember right now off the top of my head, whatever year it was. And yeah, it was a good movie. You know what? When I did my list for hockey movies, I was looking, and it's really hard. They haven't made a lot of real good hockey movies actually. But Miracle, I remember, seeing that in theaters and coming out, and I was like, yeah, this is going to be good, and it was. It didn't blow me away like, oh my god, that was amazing, but it was definitely good, and I thought Kurt Russell did a good job.
Yeah, and it's competently directed. Here's my beef with this movie. It's a great movie. Look, for our listeners who don't know, we're Canadian here at Friends
Yeah.
on Film, and my buddy Josh, who I'm talking to today, is Canadian. You may or may not have heard we kind of like our hockey. I wanted this to be about a Canadian team, and
It's based on real life, right?
yeah, there's that story there, like when Canada fought the Soviets in a big hockey tournament. And look, that's not a knock against Disney or Gavin O'Connor or anyone who made this movie. We get it. You got to market your film for the audience. We've seen a couple of movies that have shown the more Canadian personality, films like Goon and its sequel.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's, I guess because it's so ingrained in our lifestyle here, hockey, it seems shocking to us that there aren't more movies about it.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, you'll see on my list coming up, there's a couple more, but
Yeah, we got
really,
some good ones. Yeah.
yeah, and one particular one that's kind of more Canadian based too. But yeah, I would like to see some good hockey movies come soon. Just some I haven't seen it in a while, so I'd like to see it.
Kevin Smith has talked about one of his dream projects that he wants to work on. He made a movie called Tusk,
Yeah,
where he turns a guy into a walrus.
with Justin Long. Yeah.
Justin, I was actually at the world premiere of that film at TIFF, and I got to meet Kevin and talk to him for a bit, and that was cool. He said it was going to be the first installment of his Canada trilogy. The second film was Yoga Hosers, which starred his daughter and Johnny Depp's daughter, and it's like the one Kevin Smith movie I haven't sat and watched through because it was made for 13-year-old girls. But I'm really excited for the third installment, which he calls Moose Jaws, which is Jaws with a moose.
You know what? I seen this. I didn't see it, but I heard about it, and I wasn't sure if it was actually real or not. But
Sounds
that's what's
ridiculous,
coming?
right?
Well, so does Tusk, right?
Well, yeah, and he did make that. Yeah, no, it's Jaws with a moose, and it takes place in Canada. And I'm like, only Kevin Smith could make that movie. I think the moose eats Silent Bob and stuff too. Like it's
Is it based? Is it supposed to be like a comedy, or is it actual
horror
legit
comedy. Horror comedy.
horror comedy?
Um, it's supposed to like mash up his Canadian set films with his Viewers Universe, Jay and Silent Bob films, I think. But the reason I brought up Kevin Smith was because he's been wanting to make a movie called Hit Somebody, which is based on a Warren Zevon song of the same name, and it's about a Canadian hockey player who gets by in the 1970s in like the WHA and eventually what becomes the NHL, but he's a goon, and I guess it would be similar to some of the plot points that showed up in Goon, but Kevin Smith is a massive fan of Canada, and he's a massive hockey fan. If you've ever seen any of his movies, you know that. So
Yeah.
I'm waiting with bated breath on that. The sad part of that story is he said he had the prologue scenes with Lord Stanley, who the cup is named after, who was an Englishman, and he wanted Alan Rickman to play him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, unfortunately, though, Alan Rickman has since passed, and that won't be possible. But anyway, so we want more hockey movies. That's the point of that.
Yeah.
Coming in at number 16, we have The Replacements.
Yeah. Good old classic 2000 football movie with my boy Keanu and Gene Hackman. This is a good movie, man. It's one of those movies that you can watch anytime, anywhere, you can jump in at any time and just really enjoy it. You don't really need to sit down and follow it, so closely.
It's still enjoyable.
Yeah, exactly. It's your far-fetched kind of borderline cheese, but still very enjoyable. And there's some good scenes. John Favreau's in it too.
Yeah, totally. Keanu Reeves, he's another Canadian boy, another hockey player. We
Yep.
love Keanu, and
Love him.
Keanu gets shit on a lot.
I don't understand why. I mean, I guess the only reason they shit on maybe is for in his early days, his acting abilities, maybe.
Dude,
But
Bram Stoker's Dracula, come on.
I love him, man. Like
But he's terrible in it.
Oh yeah.
But he's terrible in it. Look, John has come around a bit on Keanu Reeves, and look, we all now realize what an absolute stand-up guy he is in real life.
Yeah.
And a really nice guy and all that. He is limited as an actor, but he doesn't let that stop him. Like in The Matrix, he's perfect for that kind of role. He's perfect on Wick. He's good in this, The Replacements. I have even gone to bat for him, especially in a movie called Something's Gotta Give. Because in this movie, Keanu Reeves plays a medical doctor, and he's working opposite Jack Nicholson and Diane Keaton, two mega heavyweights in the world of cinema. And I'm sure they elevated his game. But he plays a doctor, a person who's obviously way smarter than Keanu is in real life. No offense. But he plays it very, very convincingly. So, yeah, I mean, yes, in Bram Stoker's Dracula, that's the punchline. He was terrible and his accent was worse. But even geniuses like Clint Eastwood know their limitations as actors. And, someone like Morgan Freeman basically always does the same thing. Just because you don't have a tremendous amount of range doesn't mean you can't be a great actor. And so, fuck the haters. We love Keanu.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. New Matrix movie coming out.
Yeah. You know what? I'd have to go back and sit down and watch them again. I was never a big fan of The Matrix. That they were just okay. The first one, anyway. The second, the third, I don't even really remember. Yeah, I'd have to go back and sit down and actually watch them again. But
you know what is the best part of those Matrix movies is Hugo Weaving as Smith. He's amazing. Yeah, he's the villain. He's pretty bitchin'. They're fun to look at. They have quality. Here's what I don't get though. I'm looking at the cast of The Matrix 4, and I'm like, all these people have died.
Oh, yeah, they'll somehow figure a way to bring everybody back, right?
Yeah, of course. They're all dead though, and it's just like, well, yeah, everyone died in the end of Avengers: Infinity War too. We all know how that played out. Coming in at number 15, we have a really touching movie, a good drama, Rocky Balboa.
Yeah, and this is one where you talk about somebody being like painted as a one-dimensional actor in Stallone, and man, I think Stallone, definitely over the years he's grown, but I think in this movie particularly, as well as Creed, like you mentioned, he was amazing, man. And when I heard that they're doing another Rocky years later, I think he was like 62 when this came out or something like that.
I think 240 now.
Yeah,
not stop.
But so I was like, oh man, how is he gonna get him in there and actually box and whatnot? And it's just gonna be so over the top cheese. But man, the way they did it was perfect. I don't think you could have done it any better. They knew that he was old. He still got in amazing shape for his age, like jacked at 62. Yeah, he still is. Yeah, well, he's 73 now or something like that. I don't even know how old he is now, but and even the non-fighting scenes, like when he's talking to his son, that whole speech is just I loved it. I could watch that every day.
And this is obviously something that Stallone wrote and directed himself. He's sure he has his limitations as an actor, but he is a very smart guy in real life, and he's a talented filmmaker, and he obviously had a sincere love and appreciation for this character, which has sort of defined his career. And he wanted to give him a proper send-off, and it really ends on a very satisfying note, Rocky Balboa. Of course, later we get him back in Creed, where he does, in my estimation, his finest work as an actor. And again, it's this character that, has been with him since the beginning.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm a Rocky diehard Rocky fan. So and you see a lot of like franchises. The more they do, like the worse they get. Like Fast and the Furious. Like they should have stopped that when Paul Walker died because everything else after. I mean, even before that was kind of bad, but everything else after that just been ridiculous. But you see with Balboa's movies, they're kind of like they're getting better. Even you had number five I think was a stinker, but with Balboa and then Creed and even Creed 2, they're good movies.
Yeah, he's breathed new life into him, and it's birthed a second, spin-off franchise. But like I said, Creed was. I listened to a podcast with Kevin Smith and Ralph Garman called Hollywood Babylon, which has been a big inspiration for me as a podcaster. And they have a segment called Movies That Will Suck. And and Creed, when it was first announced, was featured on there, and everyone expected it to be shit, and everyone was just dead wrong because Ryan Coogler, this filmmaker who went on to do Black Panther, is just incredibly talented. Michael B. Jordan, a fantastic actor, and Stallone, like you said, Rocky Five, bit of a stinker, but he managed to breathe new life into the franchise, and even if we don't see any more of Rocky Balboa, he's done the character justice in recent years.
Oh yeah, yeah. One of the most iconic characters in film, I think.
Yeah, of course. Coming in at number 14, we got a movie that's very near and dear to my stepdad, Bill's heart, lifelong Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan. This is a film called Rudy.
Rudy, yeah, and this is this is probably when you think underdog story, this is Rudy's the number one, for sure. And this is a movie that when I was, it came out in '93, so we were only seven. So I was still young. I didn't really appreciate it until I'd say last 10 years, and I watched it again and kind of seen his struggles and how he just kept pushing and pushing to finally reach his goal, and finally even just getting to play the limited play time he did. It was such a good movie, and like I said, it's one of those feel good, warm your heart movies, and you never get sick of Rudy.
I think that's what a lot of people look for in sports movies, is that sort of tug on your heartstrings, underdog, believe in it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And when like I said, when people think of like, well, what's a good underdog movie to watch to make me feel good or make me get inspiration, Rudy's definitely the top of the list.
Yeah. And like for those listening, I'm sure I've got a good few inches and 100 pounds on Josh. Doesn't matter. He's still wipe the floor with me. So, like the size of the fight in this dog is quite massive. So if anyone understands that, it'd be Joshy here. Coming in at number 13, another movie that explores the school element with the sports element, because we here in Canada, we can't really appreciate high school and college football like it is in the States. It's sort of baffling to us,
Yeah, it's not even comparable, really.
No, it's really not. And you see a lot of that in something like Friday Night Lights.
Yeah, Friday Night Lights it's awesome. It's like we can't even compare it to our high school hockey because our high school hockey is not even near like that. You know what I mean?
No.
So it's a crazy. These kids are high school students, but they're also superstars just because they're playing football for the high school team, and they're heroes locally within the town, and especially if you win a state championship. And this is one of those movies that follows that. I was also a huge fan of the TV show Friday Night Lights as well. I'm not sure if you watched that or not.
I am familiar with it a little bit. Yes, it's an offshoot from the movie, right?
Yeah, and it just kind of goes more in depth of the characters on the TV show.
The type of material that makes sense for an episodic.
Yeah. But yeah, this was really good, man. It just it showed how important winning a state championship was for a school, especially in Texas, because it's football is like their religion out there.
Yeah.
Billy Bob Thornton's the coach, and he was great in it. And then also showed like the main star of the team, the running back, blows his ACL in the season, and then basically it just shows like how important this is to him, and really like without football he doesn't have anything.
And it really explores that sort of celebrity culture that gets thrust upon these young athletes who are involved in what is, again, it's sort of hard for us to imagine just how seriously and how big school football is in the United
Yeah.
States. It's unreal. It's massive. It's almost as big as like the NFL.
Yeah, it is, man. I mean, high school football is huge, and then obviously college is even crazier. But it's like I said, it's like the religion out there. And there's one, cool dynamic in this movie. It was one of the players in the team, by Garrett Hedlund plays the character. He has a very interesting relationship with his dad. His dad played on the same high school team, and he was a state champion. And his dad's an alcoholic, and he's super super hard on him, and the kid fumbles the ball all the time, and he just rips on him. And then, they have a huge altercation and blow it. And then finally at the end of the movie, even though they actually come up short and lose, spoiler alert, sorry, in the state championship finals, his dad comes up and kind of embraces him and takes his ring off his finger and gives it to him. And it was really cool.
Yeah. To all our listeners, you're fully aware that spoiler alerts.
Yeah.
I hate to break it to you, but Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father. So
Yeah, if you haven't seen these movies by now, then sorry, your fault.
you know what I'm reminded of? I'm reminded of at the Oscars when Seth MacFarlane hosted. It was the year that Daniel Day-Lewis was, had played Abraham Lincoln, and he made a joke. It's just like, oh, Daniel Day-Lewis, amazing. The last actor I thought got inside Abraham Lincoln's head was John Wilkes Booth. Ooh, and he's like, oh, what? Too soon?
Too soon.
Too soon.
I love Seth MacFarlane.
Oh yeah. He's a renaissance man. He does it all. You should listen to his jazz and swing albums. The guy's an amazing singer. He's got a voice like Sinatra, and I love me some family stuff. So that's you know what? I'm gonna try and convince John we should do a show on him. Actually, he doesn't have a big enough filmography, I guess, yet. But I loved Ted and A Million Ways to Die in the West.
Yeah, I like them, man. I thought they were. I mean, if you like Seth MacFarlane humor, then you'll like those.
Yeah, the funny story about Liam Neeson is that he'd been made fun of on Family Guy for not being able to convincingly do a cowboy accent, and so when he was approached to do A Million Ways to Die in the West, he said, "I'll do it on the one condition that I can use my own Irish accent." And so that's why he does it throughout the film. And you only ever see Liam Neeson do his own accent in, like, what is it? The Grey, Love Actually, and A Million Ways to Die in the West. I think those are like the only movies where he actually talks in his normal voice.
That's true. You never see him.
No, he's always doing British or American or something.
Yep.
Liam Neeson, there's the fucking show right there. We'll have to do. Became an action star at 65 because.
Alone.
Yeah. Coming in at number 12 is in 1986. Good year. That's the year we were born.
It's a good year, bud.
Yeah. Film called Youngblood, starring Rob Lowe.
Yes. Now, this is the one I was talking about kind of going to the Canadian scene for hockey.
Yeah.
It's about a guy, Rob Lowe, plays this Dean Youngblood. He's a superstar hockey player. And he goes to Canada actually to play. And I believe it was actually, it's not in the movie, but I'm pretty sure it's set in Hamilton.
No
if
shit.
I can remember right. But there's definitely some correlation of where it was filmed or whatnot. But
he traveled to Canada to try it for the Hamilton Mustangs.
No, there you go. Yeah, so I haven't seen it in a while, but it's
no, Hamilton is like just an hour outside of Toronto, and that's like where me and Josh were born. So
yeah, it's our home. So it's a little bit of a hometown shout out there. But yeah, this is one of those. It's if you're a hockey player, you appreciate this movie so much more because it kind of goes in depth to the locker room talk, that initiation phase when you make a team, and having to stand up and fight for the drop the mitts for the first time, and it's a really good movie, and it's full of hockey talk, hockey lingo, and you see there are people that walk around all the time. They got hats and shirts, and they have a lot of quotes from this movie. So it's definitely, if you're an old school hockey buff, and if you haven't seen this, then I'm saying get on it for sure. And Patrick Swayze's in it. He's the captain of the team that Rob Lowe tries out for and makes, and the two of them together are an awesome pair.
Yeah, and for those of you out there who are buying into the stereotype, oh, Canadians are so nice and they're so polite. It's like, yeah, put a pair of skates on us.
Yeah. Put a pair of skates on us,
And then we'll go to town on you. It's
get
the
on
only
the
professional
ice.
sport where you can drop the gloves and start punching each other, and that's part of the action.
Yeah, although it's they're taking that away slowly, but yeah, it's pretty crazy that hockey is the only sport where you're
Other
legally allowed.
than sports that are literally fighting, like boxing.
Yeah, but
like, oh, we gotta fight. All right, 5 minutes in the box, you're good.
yeah, and come back out, play again, maybe fight again, maybe not.
Yeah. And another thing, hockey players have suffered injuries during games and gone back out onto the ice with battle scars that would make even the most hardened Spartan warriors think twice. We're talking broken ankles, missing teeth. Like, seriously, hockey players are the toughest fucking sons of bitches out there.
Yep, agreed, man.
You ever had any serious injuries in your fighting career?
Oh yeah, buddy. I broke my hand twice. I've separated my shoulder in my second pro fight. I tore my pec and had to get reconstructive surgery. A lot of just sprains and stuff there. I tore my meniscus and had that removed. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Wow. All right. Coming in at number 11, we got another hockey movie, Mystery Alaska.
Mystery Alaska. You know what? This is funny that I was writing this down. I actually remember watching this, or at least seeing it for the first time advertised at your house when you lived in that townhouse.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Right on.
Yeah, it was back in 1999. And yeah, this is Russell Crowe and Hank Azaria. And it's about these guys that live in Alaska. They have their own hockey team in the city there in Mystery. And every once a week they have a game, and it's like the whole town is just, it's like their high school football out there. If you play on the team, you're a star. And then one of the guys that used to live there comes back, and he sets up an exhibition game versus the New York Rangers. And it's one of those cool concepts, and the whole hockey aspect of it, and how it's set in some tiny little town in Alaska. It just makes it pretty cool. And Russell Crowe plays the gritty veteran captain of the team that is definitely, his skill set's faded, but everybody still looks at him as like the leader.
You got to give props to a guy like Crowe, who comes from the Australian outback, and he's willing to skates.
Yeah, and also you got I forgot, you have Burt Reynolds as the coach as well.
Oh yeah, right on. Much like he was in the remake of The Longest Yard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's the person that did it a long time ago that now is just passing on the knowledge.
We were talking about Reynolds recently. He was supposed to be in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but it ended up being Bruce Dern because Reynolds kicked the bucket. It's an inelegant way of saying he died, but yeah. No, there was another role that he had turned down. I can't remember what it was. All right. Anyway, it's on one of our other shows, but subject for another podcast. We're entering the top 10 now, and we're going to talk about a movie that's not, well, is it a sports movie per se? A Vision Quest.
Yeah, it's a sports movie, 100%. If you put boxing in there, then you got to put wrestling in there too, right?
Totally.
This one is pretty dear to me too. It's about a high school wrestler played by Matthew Modine. It was back in 1985. It's your kind of cheesy / comical, kind of heartwarming, stormy movie about this young kid. He's a wrestler, and there's this other wrestler from the different high school named The Shoot, and he's like the boogeyman. Everybody's scared of him, and he goes down a couple weight classes to wrestle him. And it was actually the first time, I believe it's the first time Madonna's on screen actually. in this movie, and she sings one of her songs in it too. But it's just it's an awesome it's an underdog story as well. Loudon Swain is the kid's name, and he just kind of geeky. You know, he has the respect of the wrestling his wrestling peers because he's on the team, but he's not really the star guy. And in this, he becomes that. And I even named my gym after it. It's Vision Quest MMA now.
Right, yeah. Sweet. Yeah, actually, this film was released in the United Kingdom and Australia under the title Crazy for You for some reason.
That's it. That's the song Madonna sings. That's right.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. We had a few choice words about Madonna recently. Subject for another podcast.
But if you're like an amateur wrestling fan, you got to watch Vision Quest.
Right on. Cool. Number 9. All right, this one's classic. The Karate Kid.
Yep. I think this is on everybody's list, no matter what. Yeah, man. If it's just like you said, it's a classic. Everybody knows this movie. They quote this movie. They've seen this movie, and most people like this movie. It's kind of about this kid that moves in to a new town, and he gets picked on, and he finds an old Asian man to teach him some karate, and he doesn't even realize he's teaching him karate. He's doing his chores for him, but he kind of turns it into a lesson, and he ends up going in the tournament and winning the tournament as a long shot underdog, and it's a classic.
Did you see the remake?
I did see the remake. It wasn't horrible. I thought it would be a lot worse than it was. It was all right. It was. I guess I had such. Karate Kid holds such a high.
Needed to be remade is kind of the thing, right?
Yeah. I mean, Jackie Chan was cool in it. You know what I mean?
Love Jackie Chan.
Yeah, he was great. And it was just, I guess the dynamic was different. But after watching it, I thought I was gonna be like, oh my god, this is brutal. But it wasn't too bad actually. It was all right.
Low expectations can do wonders for a movie.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Coming in at number 8 is Bloodsport, martial arts action film, Jean-Claude Van Damme. I mean, everything that you'd expect after just hearing that summary.
Yeah, this is the classic 80s, fight movie.
Hyper realistic, this one, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. These Jean-Claude Van Damme is Frank Dukes. This is cool because it was like they based this movie on kind of like actual events happening, but there's a lot of talk about it was all bullshit, and Frank Dukes he made up a lot of it, and, but there's no way to really prove it, back where it took place. But it's an awesome movie. He goes in this kind of underground, the Kumite it's called, and there's tournament style fights, and there's the main guy played by I forget his name in real life. It's Chong Li is his character. Bono, I think it's Bono Young. Bolo Young, yeah. Mm-hmm. Anyways, he's the bad guy in it, and they have the final fight at the end, and it's a classic fight movie. Any fight movie fan or any fight fan definitely have seen Bloodsport. If you haven't, you got it.
Do you ever watch some of these movies like getting ready for a fight?
Absolutely. I used to do it more often, but I still do it sometimes. Bloodsport was definitely one. Vision Quest was one that I always watched when I first started fighting. But it's just, I mean, I know that they're unrealistic in the sense of the actual fighting and whatnot, but it's still, it's dramatic, and it gets you pumped up and it gets you in the mood, right?
All that any movie has to do is deliver on its promise. It doesn't have to be realistic.
Exactly. If you're entertained in it, it does its job, right?
I mean, The Dark Knight is a masterpiece, but no Batman movie is realistic ever.
No, and that's what I have like such tough time with, was people like they come in and they nitpick and pinpoint, and I mean, were you entertained or were you not? And that's the main focus, right?
Yeah. If you're stopping during the movie to ask yourself a bunch of questions about the logic behind it, the movie might not have done its job. But as long as I remember I went to see Brendan Fraser in Journey to the Center of the Earth. And I was with 2 film school buddies who wanted to see it, and I guess they didn't really know what to expect, but I wanted to see something else. I went in just with the lowest of expectations. And I'm like, yeah, shut my brain off. But hey, it's 2 hours I'm not wishing I had back. It was fine. It just has to deliver on its promise.
Yeah, yeah.
Something I'm gonna wait. We got one more entry, and then something I want to mention. Coming in at number 7, we're back to hockey again. We Canucks love our hockey. This is just a great movie from my childhood, The Mighty Ducks.
Yeah, 1992, with Emilio Estevez and Joshua Jackson, young Joshua Jackson. This is, yeah, Canadian boy. This is just a classic hockey movie. Any hockey fan will watch this. This is the movie we watched, on our way to hockey tournaments and playing mini sticks in the halls. This is, one of those feel good. It's a Disney, so it's geared towards kids for sure. And it's the first of 3, a trilogy. And Emilio Estevez is he's a hotshot lawyer, former hockey player, gets a DUI and then has to do community service, ends up having to coach some misfits of a hockey team, and eventually turns him into a real threat in the league, and they end up winning the championship.
Yep, classic underdog story, definitely geared towards kids. Love Emilio Estevez in it. I think he's often overshined by, his father's legendary career and the fact that his brothers become so notorious. But Emilio Estevez is a solid actor and a really talented director too.
Oh yeah, I love Emilio, man. He doesn't do a whole lot of things anymore, but I watched a movie with him not too long ago. It's actually, I think he directed it, and his dad was in it.
Probably did. If it's recent, he usually only does stuff now.
And I think it might have been. Pardon me?
Alec Baldwin in it?
No, it was called The Hike or something like that. And anyways,
it was his dad in it. It was Martin.
Yeah, Martin Short was the main.
Yeah, and I love the movie Bobby that he wrote and directed.
Bobby, yep.
And you got to give him kudos for having the balls to stick with his own name. I mean,
yeah. I never knew that growing up when we were kids. I had no idea that they were related. His dad or his brother, and then found that out, in my teens. But
they're
that's cool.
Irish and Spanish, so they all look like kind of Irish, and they have Spanish. And so Ramon Estevez became Martin Sheen, and Carlos Estevez became Charlie Sheen. But Emilio kept his own name.
Yeah, he's a real OG. And then also they, I just got word that they're doing a reboot. Actually, they're making like a TV show apparently of the Mighty Ducks, and he's coming back.
Yeah, that's all you need.
Yeah, you need Emilio.
Disney Plus is going to be doing it as an original series, and if they get him back, I mean, I'm all in.
Yep.
So we're coming up at number 6, and some movies that have this trope are sword and sandal movies. Other films, you see it in stuff like The Wolf of Wall Street, but often in sports movies, you got that big motivational speech, where either the coach or one of the players comes in. It's the kind of thing you see before everyone in Middle Earth marches on the Black Gate, or when Mel Gibson says they'll take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom. There's so many to mention. One of our favorites, I know, is from Oliver Stone's Any Given Sunday, when Al Pacino talks about life and football being games won in inches.
Yeah, and I'll just you can go ahead, just do it. Do the impression. Go ahead.
Sorry. So Josh used to love when I would do this. I'm not going to do the whole speech for you, but I like to busting out my Al Pacino impression. And, he comes in there with the rolled up newspaper. I don't know what to say, really. 3 minutes to the biggest battle of our professional lives. It all comes down to today. And he starts off there. And then by the end, as Al Pacino is one to do, he is, that's what living is, the 6 inches in front of your face. And he's just screaming. And LL Cool J and Jamie Foxx know, yeah. And they're all just pumped up. It's like, was it you who told me you used to play a recording of this speech, like in the locker room before games?
Yeah. I used to always, I put that on and just sit there for the 3 minutes and listen to that. And I found that speech pumped me up more than, any other song or anything like that. It was just amazing.
Yeah, a good monologue will get you going for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, that part alone is worth watching that movie, but the movie itself is pretty awesome, and the how many big stars in that movie is crazy as well.
Yeah, it's stylized, it's intense, it's sharply edited. I mean, it's an Oliver Stone movie. Let's not
Yeah.
take that. But I find it interesting is like we talked about how sports movies can be heartwarming and the underdog story and tug on the heartstrings and that sort of inspirational. But in a lot of ways, they are like war movies, like classic sword and sandal type things, you know, and this sort of big speech moment is a trope that when done well, it gives you goosebumps. And, you know, nobody knows how to build to a crescendo like Al Pacino does.
No, this is definitely the probably the best speech I've ever seen in a movie. I would say, it's along the lines of like when Rocky Balboa, and when Rocky's talking to his son, it's like that, but I would say even better.
Yeah, Pacino has another great one of a different variety in The Devil's Advocate.
Yes, great movie, Keanu.
Yeah, Keanu again. Yeah, where Al Pacino plays Satan. I don't know if you heard our podcast on Pacino, but John sat down with him and interviewed him about The Devil's Advocate, and he's like, "Why did Satan have to yell all the time?" And Pacino just sat and looked at him. He's like, "Huh, you're a smart fucker. You're an honest fucker, aren't you?"
That's funny.
Yeah, John's sat down with everybody. So we're in the top 5 now. We talked about schools, high school and college, and football and that culture in the United States. And this is another movie that really explores that, Varsity Blues.
Yeah, and this is another football movie, 1999. It came out the same year as Any Given Sunday, and it's, as far as like a movie itself, Any Given Sunday is probably a better movie. It's just this one, for whatever reason, maybe it's the year that
Got an
I saw
American
it.
Pie kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, it was 1999, so we were probably at 13, 14. So it was that time we were coming into high school. So that's probably why it resonated more with me. But it's just an awesome movie. James Vanderbeek is the high school quarterback. Paul Walker is actually the star quarterback, but he gets injured, and James's character becomes the star, and John Voight's the coach, and Scott Kahn's the wide receiver, and it just just an awesome high school style football movie with that high school drama attached to it.
It is sort of like, it like, not to my own horn. I think people know what I mean when I say it's got that American Pie kind of vibe to it, but with the sports angle incorporated. John Voight is great in this movie.
Yeah, man, he's awesome. I love John Voight. Ever since I saw him in Anaconda back when we were like, I don't know how
Oh my
old.
God, yeah. We got to do a podcast on B movies.
Yeah, but yeah, he's like he's an over the top like hard ass coach, but he's like just he's
you like
injecting.
that his comeuppance too, because he's a bastard in this movie.
Yeah, exactly. He plays the bad guy perfectly, and then the team won't play for him, and making him walk out with him or the team there. It's awesome.
Yeah, and the state of Texas is very much a character as well, I find.
Yeah, of course. Any football movie, man, to elevate it, it has to be in Texas,
Yeah, for sure. All right, coming in at number 4. This is a movie, of course, we've already kind of mentioned, and one we have to talk about. It won the Academy Award for Best Picture in 1976. That's Sylvester Stallone's Rocky.
Oh yeah, this is just this. I mean, these top 4, like, you can flip. Yeah, exactly. I mean, to be honest, this whole list, like, one day the 24 might be my number 13, and my number 17 might be number 6. They're all good in their own ways. It just, however they resonated with me at the time I watched them. But yeah, Rocky.
Yeah, that sentiment echoes something John had said when he was counting down his like best performances. A lot of the times you get to the top 5, and on any given day, any given Sunday, quote, they can be interchangeable. But as far as an underdog story and a fight movie and all these tropes we talked about before, Rocky kind of set the bar for that.
Yeah, man, it's the grandfather of these type of movies, and Sly, even the story behind it of how it became You
Yeah.
know, it's just incredible, and it kicked off his career, and just the movie itself I thought was great. Obviously, in all the Rocky movies, the fight scenes are such horseshit. He didn't block one punch his whole career, but it's still, it doesn't matter. It just the energy and the feeling it gives you. It just they do a great
Music.
job, and the music, of course. The dum 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 dum,
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
the
I love how that was revisited in Creed. Like it was in
mhm.
there just enough and just at the right moment.
Yeah, I mean, this is a movie that I'll sit down and, usually every year they play marathons of it, and I'll watch every single one of them. I actually went to Philadelphia a couple years ago with my wife, and I proposed on the top of the steps. I ran the steps and proposed there.
I was actually going to ask you about that, so thanks for bringing that up.
Were you? Yeah, we went and just visited. Like, obviously, we're in Philadelphia. We went up for a Flyers game and whatnot, but and visited the statue, and then I ran the steps, and just I always wanted to do that. It was on my bucket list because I was a huge Rocky fan, like everybody. And then just kind of acted like I was tired, and then proposed on the top.
This is funny. I've never been to Philadelphia. You go to Philadelphia, you cross something off your bucket list. It's to run up those steps. I go to Philadelphia. What's on my bucket list? Got to get a cheesesteak.
Oh yeah, that was number 2. I got that too, buddy.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. And for those of you who don't know, the script for Rocky was very, very hot in Hollywood, and all the studios were trying to buy it up. Sylvester Stallone insisted upon playing the role himself. He was just shut down across the board. Nobody knew who he was. This is never going to work. This is unprecedented. We want Burt Reynolds. We want Robert Redford. We want all these other people. And Stallone stuck to his guns, and he got it made. He got it made on a bit of a shoestring budget, and of course, the rest is history. This is a true life story that was sort of echoed when a couple of kids named Ben Affleck and Matt Damon wrote a movie called Good Will Hunting. And they, again, wanted to play those roles themselves and shopped it around, and people said, it's unprecedented. This is never going to happen. It's unprecedented. And they came back and said, fuck you. This is not unprecedented because Rocky happened. And so they owe that to Sylvester Stallone.
Cool.
This movie, lots to love about it. This movie did not deserve to win Best Picture in 1976. I mean, that was the year Taxi Driver and Network came out. Any thoughts on that? Taxi Driver, man, come on.
I mean, I'm a huge Taxi Driver fan, a Scorsese fan, a De Niro fan. But
Sentiment gonna tip the scale for you here?
But when it comes down to it, man, I'm sticking with Rocky. They made the right move.
Okay, fair enough. We'll have to agree to disagree.
Yeah.
Number 3, this movie, I'd forgotten about it for so long, and then I was shocked and disgusted at myself that I forgot about it, but The Sandlot.
Yeah, how'd you forget about this, bro? Come on.
No, man, I used to drink a lot back in the day. My mind, but and it was like, oh yeah, of course, The Sandlot. I mean, I can't remember how many times I watched this when I was a kid.
Right? Like, this came out in 93. We were 7.
Yeah, that was a big year, man. Jurassic Park came out that year.
Great year. But yeah, I remember my parents, I actually wrote a little post on my Facebook a couple of days ago about this. I remember my parents taking me to the Blockbuster. Shout out, RIP, the best times ever, Blockbuster.
Blockbuster Video was this place where you could go and rent on VHS and DVDs, which were things that were actually tangible that you could hold in your hand that movies used to be on.
Basically the good old days. That's what I call them.
Basically the good old days. Poor Blockbuster.
I know, man. I can't even count the amount of hours I spent in a video store growing up. It's just insane.
Ever Video 99?
Oh, I was about to say that, man. Video 99. That was like, I bet you I helped pay for that guy's mortgage. How much I rented movies.
That was our little mom and pop video rental store where Josh and I grew up, and we had some times going in there. It used to be an event, right? It's like, let's go rent a movie. You go popping up and down the aisles and stuff. Yeah.
We'd have to get a note to rent a rated R one.
Yeah, we'd forge notes.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. Anaconda, I think me and you got there one time.
Yeah, man. And then they had that little the porn section in the back. You should sneak your head in to try and see.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a podcast in there on X-rated cinema.
Yeah.
So we're coming in at the top 2, and once again, hockey's showing up in the list. Props to Josh for picking out so many hockey movies. This one, I mean, what can you say? They brought their fucking toys with them.
One of the best lines ever.
Yeah, John loves this movie, and he reminisces fondly about talking to Paul Newman about it. We're talking about Slapshot. So he says it's the best movie that gives you insight into what it was like in the minor leagues during that time.
Yeah. I mean, it does that, and also the comedy in this movie is just, oh man. I could watch this movie no matter how many times I watch it. I'm still dying laughing. It's one of those ones that it don't get sick of. And just all the different characters. You know, you got the Paul Newman as Reggie Dunlop, player coach. Just his character and how he interacts and some of the lines he says. And then you got the Hanson brothers, which is iconic, right? That trio. And then the star player, and then you got the Ogie Oglethorpe and all the guys that they're scared of. It's such an awesome movie. Like you said, just that line you said there, like they brought their fucking toys with them, or hey Reg, what'd you say to him? I told him his wife was a dyke. Like it's hilarious.
Yeah. John, before his car accident, was quite the goaltender and hockey player, and he talks about just the realism of this movie. And apparently Paul Newman still not still, he's fucking dead, but he carried around a bit of a hip injury. He's apparently, when John was interviewing him, he tapped on his hip. He said that movie still hurts.
Really, eh?
Yeah.
Well, I wonder when that would be from. But even the first, like the opening frame in this movie, the first few minutes when they're interviewing the goalie, the French goalie, like just even that little tidbit right there is just iconic.
And there's a distinct difference between French and French Canadian.
Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah. And I feel bad for our French Canadian brothers and sisters, because the French people from France, they look down on them like, oh God. It's just, they look down on them like they've totally bastardized their language and culture.
Yeah, it's like a French mixed with English that just ends up being something. Franglish, yeah.
Franglish, yeah. It's almost like if you could take an upper crust British person from Buckingham Palace in the 1860s and have them converse with like some impoverished black dude from Detroit in like the 1880s, and it's like, not that there's any judgment on either of those people, but the upper crust person would look at that person like the French people from France look at our French Canadian friends.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, it's very much stubbing the nose at it and stuff. Not like the French can be snobby already.
No, not at all.
No, not at all. Sorry, that's my British parents talking through me there. Before we get to number one, I mentioned this on a previous episode, but I just want to take a quick little break to discuss the news. So there's not a lot of news going on in the world of cinema right now because of COVID, and release dates have been pushed back. Certain studios are talking about things going directly to streaming. Cannes Film Festival's off. We're holding out for TIFF this year, which is like Christmas, and I'm hoping it still gets to happen. But I wanted to talk to you just a little bit about Jerry Stiller.
Jerry Stiller, oh man, that sucks. That just what was that? Yesterday, the day before?
I think it was yesterday. I heard the news. No, maybe the day before when we recorded this. But Jerry Stiller died at the age of 92. And Josh and I are of a generation that grew up with Seinfeld.
Yeah.
And Jerry Stiller was one of those characters that just exuded hilarity every single time he showed up on that show.
Yeah, he's awesome, man. He's any movie you always remember him in, just because the way his type of comedy. Actually, my first memory of him is.
God, I can't remember the name of it. Is it a movie about camp?
Yeah, I'm surprised you remember that. Yeah, it is. You don't remember the name?
Oh, it's.
And Ben Stiller is the
No,
the
I
star
know
in it.
that it stars. No, I don't think I can remember it off the top of my head.
Heavyweights.
Heavyweights, right?
Yeah. The fat camp, yeah.
Right, okay, yeah.
But yeah, he plays Ben's dad in the actual movie as well. He is a small. No, sorry, he's not his dad in that one. He's actually the former owners of the camp, and then his son takes over Ben.
Mhm.
But yeah, he was awesome, man. Hilarious, like you said in Seinfeld and in
A
what
lot of
was
his
it?
son's movies, like Zoolander.
Yeah, Zoolander,
Yeah, I mean, 92 is a good run, but certainly
definitely.
a legend in comedy, and he'll be sorely missed. And our sympathies go out to Ben Stiller and his family. Got to do a show on Ben Stiller soon. That just gave me another idea. I try to write notes whenever a good idea comes up here. Anyway, sitting here with my good friend, mixed martial arts fighter, film buff, sometimes actor and stuntman, gentleman Josh Hill. And we're counting down his top 25 sports movies of all time. Coming in at number one, cue your drum rolls, people. A 1992 film called Sidekicks. Maybe a bit of an unexpected choice for some of our listeners.
Definitely unexpected. I definitely don't, see many people ranking this as number one. Like I said, this list is my personal top 25 favorites. I'm a fighter, so obviously my top movie's got to be a fight style movie, right? But this movie, came out in 92. Like we were talking about Biddy 99 before, I literally probably rented this movie. I'm not even exaggerating, 40, 50 times from that store growing up. Um, yeah, I would just go in there and then I would bring it to the front desk and the guy would be like, again, really? Again? It's film starring Jonathan Brandis, Chuck Norris, Bo Bridges, what's her name? The girl from the Wonder Years.
We'll find it.
I can't remember off the top of my head.
Just,
But
uh,
what's her name again?
Danica McKellar?
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Yeah. It's kind of like the Karate Kid. He's this young kid. He's got asthma, which I had bad asthma growing up. You can remember that.
Right, yeah.
So I think that's why I related to this movie even more. But he was picked on in high school. He finally, his teacher actually is her uncle comes into town. He's this old Asian man, and he knows martial arts, and he starts teaching him. But he's like a huge avid fan of Chuck Norris. That's his idol, and he always goes off and like daydreams about going on a mission with Chuck and fighting alongside Chuck. And then eventually he goes in a tournament against the bully that he was having problems with in high school, and Chuck actually is there, and then they need another, cheesy as it is, they need another person on their team, and Chuck wants to fight the leader of the other dojo, and then he ends up being on the same team as Chuck. And it's like a heartwarming, awesome 90s movie that is just a bit cheese, but it's just it's definitely my personal favorite.
Right on. It was directed by Chuck Norris's brother.
His brother, that's right.
Chuck Norris plays himself. All right, so we've gone through your top 25 sports movies. Thanks for sitting down and talking to us. I want to ask you just a couple other things while you're on the phone here. You've done a little bit of acting and some stunt training, right?
Yep, a little bit, not a whole lot, but
Tell us a little bit about dipping your toe into the theatrical realm.
You know what? Like, me, like growing up, like I'm a pretty like shy guy. I always was a shy guy. But doing what I do for a living now as a professional fighter, I got used to having cameras in my face and having to do interviews and stuff like that. So I became much more comfortable, performing in front of people. And acting, obviously, I'm a huge movie fan, as we both were growing up. So it was something I always wanted to try and do. And then I started actually with the pro wrestling, doing that. And I kind of got the feel for it. And then, I auditioned for this one commercial actually for Coors Light on TSN, and I got the role. I got to play. It was a spoof commercial about the world's greatest bubble soccer player, Jack Linwood.
Right.
So and I got to play him, and it was like 2 days of filming, and it was so cool, man. I only had like a couple lines, but and I've done a whole bunch of extra work too, like TV shows like Suits and whatnot. But it's something that I would definitely love to get into
And you
more.
can't fight
So
forever, right? That's the thing.
yeah, exactly. I can't fight forever, and
But
um,
you can play a fighter forever because look at Stallone.
exactly.
Yeah, I've always said, man, you could totally be like the next Jason Statham.
That would be super cool. You know, what I mean, it's just I'm never gonna be like that amazing, actor, like, you know what I mean, like a Pacino, but I could definitely do something like that, like you said, like a Stallone, something action oriented and fight oriented.
Yeah, I can see it in you, man. I mean, you're a smart and empathetic guy. You understand movies and theatrics, and you've got a good angle being as physically fit as you are. I don't think that the job contains anything you couldn't learn or pick up as you go. I mean, I cut my teeth in musical theater and Broadway show tunes and stuff like that. But I mean, I would love to see you do more work. And you did some training with some stunt guys too, right?
A little bit. I didn't get to do a whole lot. I did like a little bit. I did like a sequence, and we put together this little kind of a sample type, 3-minute video, and just teaching this guy. I forget his name was Derek something. I can't remember his last name off the top of my head, but he worked with like Jackie Chan and a lot of big stunt people, and he kind of showed me the little ways. It was mostly based on like fighting and how to properly throw a punch, take a punch, make it look like you're hitting them. Pulling back is more important than actually throwing the punch itself. And just these type of cool things like that I learned in the course of only a few hours, really.
Yeah, you know what? Marvel needs a rebooted Wolverine. So
He's
let's get my
Canadian.
boy
He's
Josh.
Canadian.
Yeah. Yeah, man. There's lots of stuff you could do. Anyway, it's been great. Do you got it? You got any fights coming up?
Well, right now we're dealing with this COVID
Fighting
bullshit,
COVID.
right?
Josh Hill versus COVID 20.
COVID. I'll knock COVID right out. No, Bellator, the organization I fight for right now, is they're not putting on any shows until July. So that will be, not the absolute earliest of July, but probably more so August or September.
That Coors commercial, what can our listeners search on YouTube to find that?
Oh, it's been a while since I looked, but I think you got to type in TSN Coors Light bubble soccer, and I'm sure they'll come up, or Jack Linwood, one of the two, and you'll see it. It's about, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 minutes long, and you should find it.
Cool. Where can our listeners find you online, or just, Google search Gentleman Josh Hill? You got all your social media stuff.
Yeah, Gentleman J Hill. You can follow me on Instagram, on Twitter, Facebook, Josh Hill, and Google, and whatever. Those are basically my 2 things I only use, really.
All right, cool. Well, Josh, I love you, brother, and it's great talking to you. And thanks for being on the show. And all the best. And hopefully, maybe we'll get you back and we'll talk about some other stuff. So maybe we'll do some horror movies.
Yes, man. At any time. We shoot the shit, by ourselves without on a podcast, so we might as well do it on a podcast, right? So,
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for having me on, buddy. Anytime, and it was nice talking to you.
There you have it, folks. Episode number 20, Jock Jams with Gentleman Josh Hill. Be sure to check out our buddy on social media, Gentleman J Hill, Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff. Check us out. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, online, www.footandfriendsonfilm.com. Got some cool episodes coming up in the near future. We're going to do a spotlight on the films of Quentin Tarantino as well as the work of Tom Cruise. Did you like our guest interview today? Would you like to hear more guests on the show? Give us some feedback. We're always open to new ideas. Thanks to all our listeners. Check out our YouTube channel, like and subscribe. Until next time, we'll see you at the movies. And cut.